But we may as well start, mate, if you want to.
Yeah, no, we'll kick it off. Thanks for hanging out. I think session 4, isn't it, Scotty? Session 4.
Session 4.
Of our refresh and relaunch series. Lots changed here in Sawtell, sunny Sawtell today. A lot of restrictions lifted this week in Sawtell, so it's good to see some of the hospitality crew back open and being able to take people and things starting to slowly open up anyway. But today's session is all about Scotty's business of thirds. So as you guys know, Scotty, founder of Renet, who, when Scotty retired in 2017, were managing $1.125 trillion worth of real estate, 5,000 real estate agents in Australia and New Zealand. Great story of success. Our entrepreneur in residence here at the Success Hub. I should probably introduce myself. I don't think I've introduced myself in any sessions, Scotty. But I'm Courtney. I'm running the entrepreneur program here. I'm a partner at the Success Hub. And we're doing a lot of work with small business up and down the north coast of New South Wales in Australia. But today's session, the business of thirds. Scotty, you want to give us a little overview of the business of thirds?
Sure. So the business of thirds is another one of the 5 business philosophies in the System 1357. And I had the business of thirds before I started the company Renet. What I mean by that is in the 90s, what we had was, and I don't have any here, but in the 90s, we had a 3x5 card. And on that 3x5 card was a 3x5 card, had 4 columns, right? So when we went out, we were door knocking business to business, selling insurance. We had simple 4 columns. And this one here was, I can't remember the exact word, but that was attempts. And this was presentations. And this was sales. And this was points. In other words, what happened was I might go and see 10 people for the day. If I get this pen to work. So I'd see 10 people for the day. And then all of a sudden, I'd manage to get presentations of, maybe 5 or 6 or whatever the presentations were. And then I might get, 1, 2, 3 sales and 12 points, for example, for the day. And we kept that because what it told us was our strike rate. What it told us was whether we were good at the introduction, whether we were good at the presentation, whether we were good at the close, or maybe we just weren't doing enough activities. So we weren't doing enough, going out and speaking to enough people a day to try and get some presentations done. And we carried this 3x5 card, and it was a bit of an honesty card. There was you didn't get paid more because you kept it or less if you didn't. It was a really honesty card, of way of tracking who you were. And in the end, my strike rate really came, every second person I spoke to, I managed to get a sale. So it was pretty good strike rate, but that took, 10 years. So it didn't happen in the first year. When I first started, it looked nothing like that. I'd go and talk to 20 people a day and hopefully get a sale. So my strike rate at first was really poor, and it took time. So we had this system then. But when it comes back to the business of thirds and people ask where it started, now Julia asked before the session, she sent me an email and said, can I relate the business of thirds to surfing? Well, do you know that is actually how I came up with the model of the business of thirds, because it came about from surfing. So when I was out surfing in the late 2000s, so even though I had the model before I started Renet, and I understood strike rates and understood this stuff, I didn't have the terminology though until one day I was explaining to someone about the surf. And I said that it's a bit like this, like if there was 100 guys in the water at a really crowded surf break, that really only a third of the guys are the strongest and the best and the fittest surfers who get all the good waves. Okay? And then there's a third of the people in the water that probably shouldn't be there. They're beginners, they're out of their comfort zone, they're where they shouldn't be, and they really shouldn't be in the water at all. And then there's a bunch of people in the middle, about another third, which get either way. They're sort of getting the waves off the beginners, or the good guys fall off and they catch all the waves in the middle. And that analogy, I then went, well, hey, I was explaining this to someone, I went, that's just like surfing. That's just like business. It's like the strike rate. It's like I can divide up all my sales strike rate into a third. So a third of my clients love me and want to stay, and a third of them are my low-hanging fruit that aren't loyal, but they're still there. And there's a third of people in the middle that can go either way, depending on what happens. And when I'm doing my sales presentations, it was exactly the same thing. So I ended up coming with this what I called at the time was a rule of thirds. So I made up the rule of thirds at first. And Andrew Third, I don't know if anyone knows Andrew Third from Sydney, he thought I named it after him. but he's supposed to be here today, so hopefully he comes along. I can crack a few jokes at Andrew. But it was actually named after surfing with the rule of thirds. And then when I left Renet, I Googled the rule of thirds and realized that it's actually a well-used photography term. So I had to change it to being business of thirds. So something I could explain in business. And it actually is probably more relative now than it ever was, because you can use it in business everywhere. And I help people explain things like budgets and strike rates and client retention and everything to do with thirds. So to answer your question, Julie, it actually came from surfing. So that's how I came up with the business of thirds model. Even though I had it in the 90s, it totally came from explaining to people what it was like in crowded surf. And it would be the same if there was 30 guys in the water or 10 guys in the water surfing. It's the same sort of analogy. There's always the strongest, fittest, best surfers in the water that get all the good waves. It's called a pecking order in surfing. It's just the way it is. Unless you go somewhere on your own, that's just the way surfing works. It's you against the elements and your mates. So that's a background of business of thirds where it came from. So in the 90s, it was purely a strike rate. That's all it was. And if I could get people to manage to get a third of their time into presentations and a third into closes and sales, they would go and make enough money to live as a commission-only sales agent selling business-to-business insurance. So that's how it came about. Like people call it funnels nowadays, and they have all sorts of cool terms. So your third sort of breaks into a funnel. If that was to go downwards instead of a crossways, that's how it works. So, and then I'll go into a little bit more of how I've made a graphic around that and help explain it to people next.
Because yeah, Scotty, we've had the conversation plenty of times about, the concept that 1/3 of business loves you, 1/3 of business isn't interested at all in what you're offering, and the bit in the middle. I want to talk about the 1/3 that aren't interested. I think it can be easy in business to try and satisfy everyone. No one likes to be rejected, and to think that maybe there's a third that don't like what you're doing, but I guess how important, do you disregard that third that aren't interested, or?
Well, no, I don't think so. But at the end of the day, just so you know, I'm going to explain the business of thirds as a vertical type thirds, but it can be horizontal as well. It really doesn't matter. So this is the best way I can describe it for people. So the best way is, let's use sales as an example. So your presentations and your sales. So if I just go right back to where it all started and how the analogy works in your presentations and your business. So when you're out presenting and you're talking to prospects, there's a third of people out there that will know, like, and trust you straight off the bat because you're young, you're old, you're male, you're female, you like football, you like soccer, you like a Holden, you like a Ford, you like a Chevy, you drive a Ute, and for the same reasons, they're going to not like you, okay? Because you're young, you're old, you're male, you're female, whatever it is, you've got a bald head, you're not wearing a collared shirt, or whatever it is, people are going to not like you for whatever reason. That, judge a book by its cover, and it's just all that standard stuff that happens every single time you go out. So some people are just going to go, I know, like, and trust Courtney straight off the bat. I'm just getting along with him. We're like-minded. It's just easy, right? So there's Courtney, and there's, oh no, I don't like Scotty because he's bald, he's old, he's not young, he's not a millennial, and I like the millennials, or whatever it is. And that's just a fact of life, okay? So that's how typical scenarios work. So you can all relate to that, right? Can't you? It's just a typical thing. So some people are going to like you and some people won't. Now, Courtney was dwelling a second ago on the bottom third. And most people tend to dwell on, oh, but someone doesn't like me or someone doesn't like my products and that sort of stuff. When actual fact, you just expect it. So part of the mindset of the business of thirds is you can just expect that that's just going to happen and just not worry about it. Is there an opportunity in that? Yes, there is, and I'll talk to you later on, okay? Just as much as up here, you can expect that some people are just going to relate to you and are going to just like you and are going to want to do something with you, but that doesn't mean you're having some success either. It can be actually what's called a false positive at times. In other words, just because you're getting some initial success from all those initial people that do know, like, and trust and relate to you, it doesn't actually mean you've got any foundation yet. It just means you've got a bit of traction. So it can also be a false positive right at the top of this tick box here. But what Courtney was saying before, because Courtney's heard me talk about the business of thirds a few times now, is the reality is it's the opportunities in business and the opportunity in sales, when you're using sales as an example right now, has always been in this middle third. It's the people that don't ring you up and go, hey, I'll use Anthony's name. Hey, Anthony, listen, I saw one of your videos, mate, you're awesome. Can we do some business? These people are up here, okay? And they're talking to you every single week. They're ringing you up and they're commenting on all your posts. And they're not the people down here that go, hey, Anthony, that video was horrible. What are you posting that stuff for? Really? Are you serious? You get those people down here and you just ignore those. It's these silent people in the middle. It's the silent people in the middle that can go, if I can draw this right, they can go either way depending on timing, needs, your presentation, your product, the offering you have, whatever it is. But they can also go either way with your competition. They can also go either way with anyone. Does that make sense? So they're very open-minded. And that's the majority of people. The majority of people are right up in here. They're not your Uber followers or the people that just don't like you. They're the people right in the middle that can go either way. So as a sales example, as a business example, like Courtney had a bar. So Courtney owned a restaurant and a bar here for a long time. And it was a craft beer bar, and it was awesome, right? And there was people that would go there every week and they wouldn't go to another bar. They're right up here, okay? And there's some people that just went, and Courtney wouldn't know who these people were unless they actually wrote to him or said it, that went, I'm not going in that bar. That's for that young crowd. I'm going down the street to the other bar that suits me better. And that's just the way life is, right? So with Courtney's fish attracting device, he had people come to him every single week on a Friday afternoon and a Saturday afternoon, had their beers and enjoyed the craft beer because they just liked it. And that happened, right? But it's these people in the middle. So what else did he have to do to attract those people is a different story. Things like put bands on, different food, different sorts of entertainment, different sorts of events. And that's how he attracted the other people to try and get more and more into this top third. So when you asked earlier about this middle third and this bottom third, they're the two thirds most people tend to dwell on because they feel rejected. And rejection's terrible, right? Who likes rejection? Come on, no one. I certainly don't like rejection, but it's just the way it is. You just have to accept it. So it's part of that mindset that, hey, just because someone doesn't like you or didn't like your content or doesn't buy off you today, it's okay. It's part of the formula. It's part of accepting how it works.
So talking about rejection, going back to your sales days, your strike rate was low. It might have been 10%, 20%. What sort of tools did you use to
training
overcome rejection?
Totally training.
Yep.
Totally training. I mean, every time I had a presentation with someone, I was just learning how to do a better presentation. And don't worry, did I want to quit when it wasn't going well? All the bloody time. And if it wasn't for being in debt, I probably would have quit that job years ago. But I got stuck in that job, I call it, for 10 years. So what it actually meant was then all of a sudden the good times came. Because the reality is also, over the course of a year, I'd have 3 or 4 hot months where things were just creaming it in. I'd be killing it. 3 or 4 hot months. And there'd be 3 or 4 months as well where I was just terrible. They were down in the dumps. They were just horrible 3 or 4 months. So this comes down to that business thing. So if you can accept over a year or even over a 10-year journey that a third of your years are going to be good and a third will probably not be as good as you want. And same as your calendar year. So a third of your months are going to be awesome and a third of them aren't going to be. Where the biggest opportunity lies is in the middle third of the year. And some of this isn't your fault. Let's take COVID, for example. Some of it's not your fault, but you just accept that that's what was going to happen. And none of us can predict what that is. So that could have been fires, it could have been floods, it could have been just a downturn in the economy. As it turned out, we had a global COVID. Whatever it is, you just know that it's coming, which is why when you're budgeting for your business, you always allow for this to come along because it's a fact, it's going to happen. So you don't budget to spend 100% of what you're getting here because you know for a fact you're going to end up with some situations where this is going to come into play. And whether it's this year, this month, or this decade, it is going to happen where a third of the years are going to be rougher than what you want. They're not going to be the way you want them to work. Whether it was the GFCs or something internal because of staff or product or competition, things turn up all the time. So how did I stay disciplined through these sort of chapters? Was simply through, I guess, staying disciplined to myself and being committed to the long-term journey of what I wanted to achieve. So in the insurance business, it came back down to either knowledge, so revisiting what the skill set was that I needed, so going back and learning, or planning, trying to plan my way out of it. Well, what do I need to do? I either quit or plan. And that's as simple as it came down to. So a lot of it to do with planning and knowledge. Let's give a surfing. Can I go back to another surfing example, Julia? Do you know the world's best surfer, right, is Kelly Slater? He won 11 world titles, right? And there's no other, it's arguably he's the world's best athlete ever. I mean, he was right up there with Michael Jordan, right up there with Schumacher, and right up there with the cyclist, what was his name, that got caught out for drugs in the end?
Lance.
Yeah, Lance Armstrong. He was right up there, right, as the world's best athlete. But you know his strike rate on winning. So they go out and surf these heats, these competitions. He was the best in the world. You know what his strike rate was for winning? 63%. His strike rate for winning was 63%. Most of the guys that are on the world title, on the world championships, they struggle to win a third of all their heats. What he did was he maximised on this middle third. That's what made him, being a world tour surfer, turn into a world champion surfer, was by winning these ones. But he still lost. More than a third of every single heat he went in, and he won 11 world titles. So if the world's best surfer already knows he's going to lose a third of them, everyone else that's below him knows they also have to adapt to that. They know that they have to lose and re-pivot, retrain, refocus constantly as a professional athlete. Now, if you look at the football teams or soccer teams, they don't win 100% of their events either, do they? They don't win 100% of their comps. They go through the year, and if they're having a really good year, they'll lose only a few. Okay? But sometimes they go out and play the game, and they just can't lose. They're so on fire that everything goes right. And other times, they're playing against someone else that's on fire, even if they've had a good game themselves. Someone else they've come up against is just all over it, and they're getting beaten. Not that they weren't any good, they just got beat, they got outplayed. But really it comes down to this bit in the middle, how they trained, how they applied themselves, their focus on the day, their preparation, their mental attitude when things were down. It's this area in the middle, going back to a sporting analogy. It's exactly the same. So in business, when things aren't going right, it's always this middle third that you're missing out on. Not the bottom third, but it's always the middle third that you're missing out on.
So going back to your time at Renet, for example, say these are real estate agents, these are clients of yours. Where did you spend the bulk of your time? Did you spend it on the top third? Is it on the middle third?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. All right, so let's go back. I can break this down into several different layers of types of clients. So I had some major clients that were spending big money, okay? And I tried to really nurture those because it's a lot easier to sell something to someone who's a client than it is to try and find a new one. And I let salespeople go and do new ones. If they were big accounts, I got involved in that sale. But I always tried to look after the top third as much as I could personally because I couldn't see everybody anyway. I mean, the business was that big. If I went and saw every office, one per day, it'd take me 3 or 4 years to go and see them all if I didn't have a day off. It physically wasn't possible. So where do I focus my attention? It was always on this top third. That's where I did. As an office though, we always did solutions and products for all of these people here. We didn't want to lose anybody, but it just happened. You know, I gave the analogy before that people buy off you for the same reasons they don't buy off you. Well, it was the same for us in the real estate industry. We got clients for the same reasons we lost clients. They got into business, they got out of business. They opened a franchise, they got out of a franchise. Do you see what I'm saying? So it was exactly the same reasons. As long as I got more than I lost, the business was still growing and I was happy. The only year I had a decline in growth was the GFC, 2010. Otherwise, every other year, we always had growth in business. So going back to Renet, where did I spend my time in the end was mostly up here. You know, helping good people get better and attracting more clients. That was part of my fish attracting device, was making sure I had quality clients I could leverage upon to grow the business. And these top third up here, you could have been one of the competition and no matter how hard you tried, you could not sell them your product. You could have tried to give it away to them and the top third were going nowhere. They were never ever going to leave Renet no matter what happened, unless I ruined them, which I didn't do. So I wanted to keep that top third of good quality clients and make sure they're loyal because they in themselves become a fish attracting device. They're the ones that are going to conferences and meetings going, what product do you use? What software do you use? Well, I use Renet. So they became my flag bearers as well. So my loyalty to them was strong, and their loyalty to me was strong. Okay, but once again, we're talking 1,650 odd offices across Australia. So it was a lot of offices across Australia. So I focused on the big things. At first it was all of them. When I had 10 clients, it was all of them. I didn't want to lose any of them, but it grew. So where did I focus my time, effort, and energy? Was there. And then I taught staff how to keep an eye on this staff. So then I had to duplicate myself through the time duplication that we spoke about. Was it last week or the week before? And that was getting them to look after that middle third. So, in a sense, I was happy to lose a few clients off the bottom to teach staff how to do the right things and grow the business. So it also became part of the leadership. And my staff were the same. I had a third of my staff were loyal. They were never going anywhere. You know what I mean? A third, look, I thought they were all loyal, but the reality is at all times, if you've got a set of staff, there's always a third that could go and leave the job anytime if they got a better offer. It's just the way it is. You want everyone to be loyal, but there's always these people up here that are never going to go anywhere, no matter what happens. They're not going to leave the job. They're involved in the job. They love the job. They love the people. They love the product. You can't convince them to leave. Okay. So in leadership, it was exactly the same. So I kept on working on, in staff, what did I do? I kept on working on more and more really, really loyal staff, because they were the cheapest ones. Even if I paid them more, they were the cheapest ones to keep. Because training new people all the time was hard. That was hard work and cost money. So I did the same thing in leadership when it came to managing staff. So exactly the same thing. Where did I focus? Don't worry, I didn't ignore the people down the bottom. That's not the case. We always had systems in place for those people. Whether they were clients, whether it was staff, we always tried to... these people are all in the hot zone now I'm talking about, if we're talking about clients. Not potential clients, not sales. They're all in your hot zone. They're all clients. You don't want to lose them. It's a lot cheaper to keep people than it is to replace them and put a new one on. So we didn't ignore them. But where did I focus on personally as the CEO? If I had someone that was spending $500,000 a year with me, well, I'd try and get them to spend another $100,000 a year. It was a lot easier to do that than was to try and find 30 new clients down here. That's what I had salespeople for. They went and found that. So that answers that question maybe for you.
Yeah. And so these guys up here, they're your advocates, obviously advocating your business. Have you got any tips or advice on building advocacy? How do you build advocacy within your clients? I know we've spoken about advertising. Whenever you did advertising, you used your best clients to advertise case studies.
Yeah, well, it's a double-edged benefit, right, of looking after these people. So you're right. So to use that example, one way I rewarded some of these flag bearers of Renet, the top loyal clients, was, whenever I did any marketing, someone would ring up and say, look, I've got $1,000, you can have a full-page ad in one of the real estate magazines, like the internal news magazines to do with real estate, which none of you would have seen because you're not in real estate, but every industry has their industry magazines. I'd go, sure, but I never did an ad on Renet. What I did was I'd grab one of these star players and put their face up in lights in the magazine. Down the bottom was, they're also a Renet client, but I'd say something really positive and really boost them even more so in their profile and their brand within the industry. And that's how I used when I first started the business, it was called viral marketing. I'm not sure what they call it nowadays, but when someone else is saying your product is good, it's called viral marketing. So that's what I did. So I got them in the ad. I'd put a big photo of them up, big highlight, big trophy type photo, and they'd be talking about something successful about their business, but it was also powered by Renet. And that's what I did with that. So that's some of the ways I did it. Plus the general conversations, the tone of voice, the way you talk to them. When I was doing new products, who did I ring up and talk to? I'd ring up and talk to some of those good clients and go, listen, what do you think of this idea? And involve them in the product growth and pathway of the company. So I'd have those loyal clients and go, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? Or if I had something I wanted them to test, how would you like to test this new product? So they became a part of the company. I talk all the time about, tell me, show me, and involve me. So tell me, I'll forget. Show me, I may remember. Involve me, I'll understand. So with clients, I really got them involved in the process of the growth of the company with their feedback and things like that. All sort of standard stuff. But if I wanted to retain, let's say I saw some of these down here that were good clients, but they weren't loyal. If I wanted to get them up to the top third, there's some of the things I did to try and get them up. Does that make sense? So if, let's say, I had an office that had, he started off as John Smith Real Estate. Now he's got 3 offices and he's vulnerable. I can see that he's becoming part of the low-hanging fruit. Competitors are asking him. He's going away to events. He's growing, right? He's one of the clients I really want to keep. Well, what are some of the techniques I did to get people to go from here to there? Well, 99% of the time was just involving them, having that conversation. And if I don't sell them something, someone else is going to sell them something. And a lot of those businesses were prepared to invest. They were prepared to pay. So if I didn't offer them a solution, someone else was going to offer them a solution. Not only did they get the sale, I lost a client. So I'd much rather go and sell them something and say, listen, what can we do to make it better for you? What do we need to do? And if they said they were 100% happy, what did I get? I knew they were up here somewhere. If they said, well, you know what annoys me is this, or what I'd love to have happen is that, I go, cool, well, we can do that. And often in the end, they'd kick the tin and pay for that development as well. So in other words, we got a win-win. They got what they wanted, I got to retain a client, I increased their loyalty, and then the competition wouldn't come along necessarily and take them out. So that's what I did and every business is different the way they do it. Like a coffee shop can have a loyalty card for the, stamping the coffees, just to try and get people to come back in through here in case they weren't going to come back. Every business can do it differently, how they look after and try and reward and keep people coming back and back and back into their businesses. But you know what a lot of it's got to do is just simple relationships. People go back to a place or back to a person they know, they like and they trust. So that, to answer your question, is the best way to attack the people in the middle that are vulnerable. If it's the first time someone had walked into your bar and they were in here, what you don't want to do is push them out the door here by not being nice to them. So that's, you know what I mean? You know yourself, you walk into somewhere and you don't feel the vibe and you just go, well, I think I'll leave. And if you do sit down, you're going to go, I'm not going back. I'm just talking like you had, which was the beer or the food or the environment, whatever it was. If you didn't make them feel comfortable, you weren't going to get them to be a repeat client.
So, Scotty, you're a competitive guy. This bottom third, there are cases where, you've decided, okay, someone's in that bottom third, but I'm going to work really hard to get them up in that top. And I suppose using the bar example, occasionally we had people come in and they'd ask for a VB. For those overseas people on the call here, VB is kind of the total opposite to a craft beer, But sometimes you would be like, well, okay, go across to the RSL. Sometimes you'd kind of sit there and go, I'm going to try and get you onto the taps here, mate. So you'd, it was always rewarding to be able to introduce someone from there and kind of get them, up to that top level.
Well, this is part of the mindset. So you're talking about prospecting now. So someone's walked into your bar and you don't have what they want. So what do you do? Now, part of mindset is you can either accept it or try to deal with it, because a third of the people you're going to have to work on. Yeah? How often do you go into a place, they go, oh, no, look, mate, we don't have that. And you go, oh, okay, I guess I'll leave. And that wasn't quite the experience you wanted, right? What you really wanted them to do was go, hey, listen, but I've got this new beer on tap. Come along, I'll give you a little sample and I'll give you a try. A little bit of a Trojan horse, you know what I mean? I'll give you a try. How would you like some samples, right? And all of a sudden, what are you doing now? You're involving them and all of a sudden they're coming in. Now, they may not like it as much as VB, but did you get a client? Did you increase their loyalty? Did you do all the right things? So part of the business of thirds is some people are just going to walk in and go, can I have 3 beers? And some people are going to go, you're going to have to sell me. You're going to have to do something to convince me or else I am gone. And like I said, so with the business of thirds, let me give another example here. So let's dive into the thirds into a deeper layer, because the business of thirds also has a third within the third. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So what I do here now is if I divide this up into this, okay, can everyone see the third on the third? So basically I've done the same tick and cross within each of these thirds here. You got that? So basically these top third here, call it 10%, we're always going to do everything with your business. They know, like and trust. The timing's right, everything's good, whatever it is, they're always going to do something with you. And this case here is, I might know, like, and trust and really have everything right, but I'm just not ready for right now. So I can be down here as part of, I would if I was going to, but it's just not right now. I might do something next year. I might do something later, if that makes any sense. And same thing down here. These double X's down here, you just kiss it all goodbye. Nothing's ever going to change that person's mind, right? They're just gone, No different to me walking past a tattoo parlour. I have absolutely no desire to get a tattoo in any way, shape or form. But some people do. And off they are up the top here. But I'm down here somewhere when it comes to that. And I say that because all my mates have got tattoos and I couldn't stand one. But, maybe one day there'd be a sentimental reason for having one or something and getting a little one. So one day they could do something and get me up here. So at the top of your thirds and the bottom of your thirds, you can still break it into thirds again. But this is where it comes down to the opportunity, Courtney. The reality is, if I just do this line across here and this line across here, because these are the people that aren't doing anything right now, it's this. 60% of your people you're talking to in your business are the ones that can go either way depending on what you do. And that's the same in sport, whether you're a competitive sport person, whether it's business and your clients, whether it's staff and retention for staff. Good one for you there, Brendan, with leadership. Okay, so most of your work happens here in this 60% in the middle. The ones that, everything's good up here, but something can happen and they can all of a sudden have a crack. Or timing needs to be right. And same thing down the bottom here. Something happens and all of a sudden they end up in this middle third and they have a conversation with you and you're off and running. But the reality is with the business of thirds model is you have to expect that a third of the time you're going to have to work to do some of that business. Does that make sense? So let's say you've done something, you've created a Trojan horse, you've got a fish attracting device and people come and have a conversation with you. You can expect some people to say yes and some people you're going to have to work with. Some people are just going to take longer than others. You're going to have to do a better presentation. You have to get right into your follow-up. So your follow-up becomes really important if it's a long sale. If it's an immediate sale like yours, well, want 3 beers. It's pretty easy to, it's not a long-term sale when you've got a restaurant. But, if you've got something that sometimes people take months and months and months to get a client because it's a $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 deal or a contract. So some sales are really long. So the reality is it's 60%. So you can expect you're going to have to work sometimes getting clients in this formula. So expect it. Expect some of them you're going to have to go, I'm going to have to work on this person. And you can, have you ever walked down a restaurant strip and there's people at the front of the restaurants and there's some out the front of the restaurants that are really, really good at getting you to sit down. They talk you through the menu. They tell you what's good on the menu tonight. They say you're going to love it. They want you to sit down in the nice warm seat. They'll move the heater around for you if it's winter. They're the people that are so really good at getting people into the restaurant that otherwise would have went somewhere else. All of a sudden, I didn't feel like Italian, but all of a sudden this person's made me feel like Italian. I'm going, okay then. Because I'm in the hot zone. I'm walking down the restaurant strip. What was I doing down that restaurant strip? I was going to buy food off someone. And they don't want me to go next door. So they have a really good person at the front that, you can call it, they've probably got a proper name, but I'm going to call it the salesperson at the front, making sure they don't miss opportunities. Yeah? And then you walk past the next restaurant, it's only half full, and there's no one at the front trying to drive this. There's no one at all trying to drive it. And why is one busy and one's not? Because one's creating an environment and one's not missing these opportunities. Now, if I just walked up and said, hey, I feel like Italian, can I sit down with me and my 4 mates? Well, that's perfect. They get those too. But they realise they don't want to miss out on some of these ones. You've all been down a restaurant strip and seen those people. Some are just so good at it. And it makes all the difference. Even when you order food, you sit down and you go, oh, what's good on the menu? And some of them go, oh, I don't know. And other people go, the seafood special tonight's awesome and the steak's unreal and there's a salad that's really good and everyone's ordering that one. Some people get it in a restaurant and some people don't. I know for the people, the friends in USA, I mean, you guys all get paid tips over there, so everyone's pretty good in restaurants. When you go to Australia, it's a little bit less active on customer satisfaction when we go out to a restaurant. So, but yeah, so Julia, to hitchhike on what you said, it's exactly the same in sport. It's exactly the same. I know that sometimes I go out performing surfing and everything just goes right. And other times I have to get grit and determination and work super hard to try and get through that heat. Am I happy that I know that I'm going to lose a third of them? No, I don't want to lose any of them. I don't want to lose nothing. I always want to win everything. But the reality is I can't. But I know that a third of the time I have to work super hard. And when things aren't going right in the heat, you know, I want to come out of the water knowing I've given it my best shot and not give up. So, you know, I just know that, you know, I know this is one of those heats where I have to focus and I have to not give up, and that's just the way life is. And other times I paddle out in the first 5 minutes, I'm winning the heat and the others have to catch up. So, you know, sometimes it's just my lucky day. But if I'm out in the water where it's someone else's lucky day, I have to work.
Julia brought up the 80-20 rule.
Yeah, very similar. I like it. Love the 80-20 rule.
Yep.
Same, but different. So I'm not sure if that helps at all, but same, but different. So the 80-20 rule is one of my favourite things, but this is completely different to the 80-20 rule. You know, I used to have a thing that, you know, for example, in software, I think one of the reasons why I created a software company, even though I didn't have experience in software, was because I managed to finish 100% of the projects. Whereas a lot of software guys start stuff, see something shiny, then start another one. See something shiny, start another one. See something shiny, start another one. They never quite finished a product. They never quite went out and sold it and got customers and got everything right. And that last 20% of a product is always the hardest bit. It takes 80% of the time. And they never quite get it finished. But I had the ability to finish it, deliver it, ready or not, I'm going forward, a bit like System 1357. It's just out there, and I'll refine it and refine it and refine it as I go. And I know the last 20% is going to take 80% of the time. But so it's the 80-20 rule for me. I love it. It's one of my favourite sayings. But this is slightly different. But I guess you can relate to it here, no problems at all. Okay, but it's slightly different in the sense of strike rates and things like that. Even the way I budgeted for the company, believe it or not, was on a thirds model. So there was a third I knew was hard fixed expenses. Okay, there was a third I needed to reinvest back in the company with staff and all that sort of stuff, and there was a third that should be profit for me, and that was a formula that I ran with. So if I didn't have a third profit, there was no point being in business. Okay, I needed some money for me for doing all the effort. But I also had third hard fixed costs. So every year when I did my budgets and forecast, I had a base, and that's what I had, and then I'd try and grow it from there. So I even used it as a budgeting format, only as an analogy. I even used it as a budgeting format. So, you know, here was, if I had an X amount of dollars here, you know, a third I wrote off because that's fixed cost. It was rent, it was all those sorts of things that happened, right? And over here was my profit, so that was for me. And in the middle was what I did to increase profits and expenses, and profits and staff, anything else to grow the business, what I needed to do. So this was my kit. So that's how I also budgeted for the company that I had as well, as an analogy. So I use the thirds all over the place. So it's not, I know you could go 80-20 rule, and I love the 80-20 rule. Big fan of it. I don't even remember the guy who came up with the saying, but it's an unreal saying. But it is slightly different. It's definitely slightly different. But same. If that's how you relate to it, I'm all for that. No worries at all. Because I love the 80-20. It was interesting though to watch the loyalty of the top third of my clients. No one could take them away because of the relationship I had with them. And I did really try to nurture those people. You know, and sometimes, I mean, I really tried to make sure I had those conversations and I had that deep and meaningful relationship with those people in the top third for that exact reason. So they became the flag bearers. And, you know, in the end, they'd tell me when competition walked in the door and tried to give them a presentation. We had such a strong relationship in that top third that I'd tell them to go and have a look at the product and let me know what you think. I was that strong a relationship that you go for it. Go and have a chat to whatever else it is and let me know what you think. If there's something good in there that you think that you like, well, then we can look at putting it in for you. Does that make sense? I knew they weren't going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They weren't going to throw out Renet because someone else had one shiny little product. They were going to keep Renet, but we can perhaps massage it to being whatever it is they saw with the other competition. My relationship with those people was so strong, it wouldn't have mattered what they saw or what they did, to the point of, if we talk about the 4 levels of the human mind, talk about that right up to the belief level. I mean, there was nothing that was going to get them to convince. No one was going to convince them at some conference somewhere that they should change providers. So if they went to conferences somewhere, I didn't feel vulnerable one bit. Off you go, Go see what else is out there, and let me know what you think, and we'll work on a pathway together. And that's what I did. So that's part of that loyalty, that top third of clients, as far as that goes. Yeah. So yeah, Julia, are you unmuted?
I think so. Am I unmuted?
Yep, you're loud.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Hi, how are you? Did you have a technique, a filtration system for the bottom third? Meaning, a way to identify, how much time to invest. So it seems like on the bottom third level, it might make sense to have some sort of filtration of trying to read, if they're going to go up or not.
Are you talking about, all right, so are we talking about on sales? Are we talking about retention of existing clients or even product lines? Because remember, in product, I had the same thing. A third of my products worked and a third of them didn't. So it was all this third for everything. So which part of the business cycle are you talking about? Sales specifically or?
Interesting. Let's stick with sales because I feel like we've been doing, like in my head, this presentation, I was thinking sales throughout it. I wasn't necessarily thinking products.
Yep.
But was there like a technique or did you have a research team or were you doing profiles or how did you sort of identify, or was it just more of, your own touch and go philosophy of how much time you were spending?
Well, let's convert this into yes, no, and maybe. Okay. So if we go yes, no, and maybe, what we all want to get is the yeses. And how do you know if it's going nowhere? It's because you're getting the no answers. It's pretty easy, right? But I tried to avoid no answers at all costs. What it meant was if I had someone I had to work with and I could see they weren't saying yes, I knew I had to slow down a little bit and then look at the other strategies, which is a pipeline or a process to follow up with them. I knew this was going to take time. So I didn't, people are pretty aware of their ability to say yes and no. And you read that pretty fast because they're asking all the right questions. How do I get started? What do we need to do? I'm doing something next month. I need something done before then. You're getting all the right yeses up here. And these people down here aren't giving you the same vibe. Okay? So if you're not getting that yes positive vibe, well then that's pretty easy to recognize. So that's why I say part of that's the mindset to recognize, expect that a third of the people you talk to are going to take some work. Okay? And then there's two sides. They're buying your products, but you've also got to decide if you want to work with them. There are some people you talk to and you go, they might know, like, and trust and want to deal with you, but you're looking at them going, I don't want to deal with you. You're just going to, I can see already this is not my avatar client. It's going to be a world of pain. So there's two sides to this, right? There is you on the other side going, hey, you're down here for me. Unless you do something here that's going to impress me, we're going nowhere, right? But let's just stick to their side when they're looking at you. So if you want them as a client, you just expect that a third of them you're going to have to work on. And a third of them are going to take some extra time, effort, and energy. A third of them are potentially just going to say no matter what you do.
Maybe this is a better way of saying it. In that bottom third, what were the signals that you picked up that they were progressing? What were some ways of indicating like they were going to be a better customer?
As a sales perspective, so just in the sales presentation side, the moment they start asking questions, they're transitioning. So if they're not asking questions and you're still making all the positive statements and you're still doing all the presentations and you're putting all those things forward and they're not engaging with questions, they're going down here somewhere. You just know it. The moment they start asking questions, how do you let them, this is the key word, how do you let them go on that journey is by letting them ask questions. But they might want something you don't have. If I walked into the Ford dealer and asked for a Mercedes, he doesn't have it, no matter what happens. He might know, like, and love me and trust me and everything else. We might just get along like a house on fire. But all of a sudden we realise that I just don't have the product for them. If I go to an Italian restaurant, okay, but want Thai food, it's not going to work. Everything might be great. Sometimes it just doesn't work, and because of the questions. But in theory, you're talking about people in your warm zone. They've come to you because of some sort of conversation. So in theory, you're talking about the right kind of people here. So let's get rid of the ones that, I don't have anything for. Because some people ask me, hey, Scotty, I'd I'd love to talk to you about starting my own business, and I'm thinking about starting up. And what should I do? And I go, well, actually, you're too new for me. Unless you've got some sort of business or some sort of idea or some sort of momentum, I'm not going to help motivate you to think of an idea. It's too new for me. So that's me in reverse. No matter how excited and how good questions they are and how much they want to lean upon some of my knowledge, I go, look, it's too new. Like, for example, I go, Courtney, here's someone perfect for you. Because Courtney's got the Entrepreneur Startup Program. Perfect for Courtney. So we bounce off each other. So I still give an answer. I don't lose faith or trust with that person. I still create a solution, but they're just not for me. But that's the reverse of someone down here that I don't want to deal with. But, you know, if they do have something that I want, let's say they had a company and they got whatever staff and they really want it, well, if they're not asking me some of the solutions, if they're not asking me what I can do next, if they're not asking me those questions, it's just that big, you know, white flag. There's just not enough information yet. They're not buying yet. I have to slow down. I have to go right back to an open level mind and just have that, you know, and know that this is going to be a process. It's going to be one of these sales or one of these clients I'm going to have to work hard on over a longer period of time. And then you've got to ask yourself, is this a transactional sale? Or, like, is it worth it? Are we talking about a $30 product now, or are we talking about something that's $3,000 or $5,000? If it's a $30 product, it's just too hard. They're not my kind of client either, you know, depending on what you're selling, of course. You know, so if they walk and you've got to work that hard to sell a beer, it's probably not worth it.
Well, I think one of the things I learned in hospitality was sometimes that bottom third can detract from your top third. You know, if you've got loud, noisy, boisterous customers, and then you've got other customers that want a quiet environment, you need to kind of decide which ones you want to bring on board, because, you know, they can conflict. Because
you're your avatar client, you know, who you really want to attract on every single day of the week. You know, it depends on your business, of course, but you've got to make those decisions. You've got to make those decisions sometimes to let people go as well in that sales process. So, you know, I mean, if you see that someone's going to be too hard to work and they're not getting engaged, and you're working really hard, you're not getting anywhere, you just have to let them go, because you want to go find more of these people. So as a sales example, you know, if you're going to talk to 10 people this month, which is 100 people this year, rounded figures off, all right, you know that out of those 100, 30 odd people are going to want to know and talk to you. A third of them aren't, and a third of the middle are going to change no matter what happens. Okay? So sometimes you just got to let these people go. If you're not getting that, you know, feel their pulse, and you're getting the good questions, you're not getting that stuff back in return, you just got to let them go and go, look, put them in the pipeline, I'll send you some information, I'll send you some brochures, or I'll send you a link to some stuff, or I'll send you some more information. So you keep them in the warm zone, because that's where they are, but then keep going and looking for more presentations, you know.
It was interesting, Mel's put a comment in there that, you know, even if you don't have what a customer wants, if you can refer them to someone who can, you know, that you can still give them a positive experience. And, you know, going back to my hospitality experience, I guess, you know, if someone did come in and you didn't have what they wanted, if you were able to, you know, make some suggestions down the street where to go, I agree, Mel, you give them a positive experience. And, and who knows, maybe they've got children or someone else who, you know, when they recommend it next time, maybe they'll go to your venue. So
yeah, exactly. And, you know, even with products, you know, I mean, I had product releases, and some of the products took off that I least expected, and some of the products that I thought were really good never got any traction at all, like nothing, you know, so they just sat there dormant. I just had to let them go. The last 2 years I was at Renet, I wrote this really awesome system to allow sales rep to share data and become teams and do everything else. You know, I tried so hard to get that off the ground. I thought it was the best software ever. I thought what I'd done was the most amazing solution, and no one caught onto it at all. No one thought, hey, this is awesome. No matter how much I explained it to people, it got nowhere. Sometimes it's just the way it is, you know. It wasn't what the market wanted. They weren't ready. Who knows, you know. So sometimes it's just the way it is. You probably put things on a menu and no one ordered it. You go, why? I thought it would taste unreal. Yeah, but, you know, it's just the way it is sometimes. So, so what are the signs, Julia? It just goes back down to that if they're not asking the right questions and they're not engaging, then you know you've got some work to do. So it's as simple as that. Which is, to be honest, you should always assume you've got work to do with every client. But yeah. I mean, I did a workshop a few weeks ago with Rob Deptford about time wasters. you know, and I just said, well, I don't believe anyone's a time waster. They just haven't enough information yet. But I get there is the point where you go, well, this is a person that's not my avatar client, and you just have to say, look, I'll send you some information, and you know, I'm going on my way, because it's more important to focus on the things that are going to get me business. At some point, you've got to give up on some things and just let it go, and just go, well, that's just not worth my time, effort, and energy. So,
Scotty, I wanted to ask about scarcity. I was talking to someone recently. You know, they could only take on so many clients. They were reluctant to advertise because of that fact. You know, my opinion was advertise and show people that, you know, that it's sometimes, you know, if it's scarcity, it kind of encourages people to take more interest. You know, do you agree that if there's a bit of scarcity, it kind of, these people in the middle third will want to get to that top third more?
You mean by making the product exclusive? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
You meant by scarcity, or scarcity of the person advertising that they're going to end up with too big a business? Because
if you can only take on so many clients.
Yeah. You know. So if you only have the capacity to take on, you know, 100 clients or 1,000 clients or 10 clients at any one time, there is that nervousness of, you know, we had that exact example at Renet. So if I got any more than 10 sales a month, it got all of a sudden hard to deliver what the experience was supposed to be, you know, which was the onboarding process and all those sorts of things, right? It got really hard to deliver that if we got any more than 10. So we had to make sure that we you know, the bonus systems were in place and the marketing systems were in place for retention and for onboarding. We had to make sure all that was in place, or else, you know, if I did a big advertising campaign and 100 people wanted to sign up at Renet in a month, I wasn't going to be able to fulfill that. It just wasn't going to happen. And I never wanted to collapse the business. So the goal was always to be manageable, sustainable, and profitable. It was always those three things. So I exactly relate to what you said by scarcity of advertising and marketing, because, you know, if I had a coffee shop and next thing you know, everyone was lining up out the front because I did this big campaign and no one could get their coffees because there was too much of a lineup, you know, you'd feel pretty disappointed, right? Because you can only pour so many coffees at once. You know, you can only deliver one every minute or whatever it's going to be. So you can make X amount of coffees an hour. So if 1,000 people want to, you know, your capacity to 100 coffees in an hour, it's not going to happen, right? So I get the point of scarcity. But I guess what that means is, you know, you're now getting this, you know, you're getting more and more people to your loyalty, and you've got a really good problem. So you shouldn't be scared of attracting more than you can handle in a way, you know. So I get that. I don't think, you know, maybe Apple, when they released the iPhone, has a lineup of customers and that sort of stuff. But most of us would appreciate the extra demand for our products and services. And we had the months where we had 20 odd sales, but we just had to handle it. But you know what happened the next month? We had to back off a little bit and make sure we deliver on those clients. So we don't want people going out the back door. Even though I'm aware that a third of them may drop off, I don't want anyone dropping off. So by being aware of that formula, it makes you aware that, well, we have to do things to protect that. Because if we don't do things to protect that, we're just going around in cycles all the time. Does that make sense? So by being aware that there are going to be a third of people here that are going to fall into a crack, let's make sure we look out for those people. Let's make sure we do the right things for those people. And let's make sure we retain those people. That's why I had systems where the onboarding staff nurtured clients, gave them follow-up calls in the first week, gave them follow-up calls in the first month, and did all that nurturing with content and things like that to retain staff. Or else I was going to lose a third of all sales. And as it was, we retained 96% of our sales every year. So 4% of our sales every year dropped off for whatever reason. And sometimes not our fault. You know, they got into business 3 months later, they didn't have any money left and they were gone, you know, whatever. It wasn't our fault. We had people go broke in the good times. We had, you know, the receiver letters from all the debtors turn up when the market was booming, let alone when the market was bad. So we knew this was there. So by being aware that that's there, it also makes you aware of making sure you try not to lose people as well. You know, if I'd have lost 10% of people every year and only grew by 10% every year, well, you know, it's a lot easier if I don't and I retain 95%, then I'm growing by 15% every year. And that year on year on year is actually a massive amount of growth. So, yeah, it helps you be aware of exactly that this is there. It doesn't mean you let it happen, but it just, you know, sometimes it's just the way it is and you have to accept it. You know, don't get disappointed with it, but also try to do the right things to protect that. But if you ask me where most of the focus comes in, you know, in retention and stuff like that, it's definitely in the top tier. Definitely in the top tier.
Yeah, I think the current challenges with COVID, we were talking about, this is where businesses have really stamped their value. I think, the way businesses have handled it has either pushed people up or it's pushed people down.
Well, I'm going to leave everyone with a quote right now. One of the things I learned last week, and I'm doing another session tonight with these international coaches all over the world, and one of them said last week, his name is Mark Zimmerman, and he said, and he didn't mean to say it, but it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And with this whole COVID thing, this is in business, in your careers and everything else, this is the only chance we've ever had where we get a second chance at a first impression. And I went, wow. He didn't mean to say it like that, but it just went bang. So right now, everyone's starting up again. Everyone's had their couple of months of COVID and stress, and not that the stress is finished or the uncertainty is finished, but everyone's sort of looking at, they're starting again, they're pivoting again, they're looking for things. So everyone right now has a second chance at a first impression. That includes your clients, your potential clients, your marketplace, whatever you're pivoting into right now, everyone around the world now has a second chance. So what you said a second ago reminded me of it, because there's some businesses out there doing their first impression again. They're doing this and they're attracting this, they're doing that. And there's some businesses out there not doing any first impression again. And guess where they're going? So if their activities are hanging down here and their activities are doing nothing because they're just dwelling on the negatives of everything, well, guess what? Those people are now going to go up here to some other person's business and they're going to get attracted away because they're inactivity. So right now, everyone around the world, and it's uniform, has a second chance to create their first impression of who they are and what they have to offer, which is just a phenomenon. There's never been like that before, ever. And COVID's done that for everyone. I know it hasn't been easy. I'm not saying it's been easy. I'm just saying that mindset is just a phenomenon that we've never had before.
Well, guys,
what time is it?
It's 2 minutes to 12. Has anyone got one last question they want to hit Scotty up with?
So if not, no hand raises. So if not, I'm going to close on, and then I'll hang around for a few more Q&As.
I was just going to ask you one more thing. But back in the insurance sales days, you said your strike rate improved.
Yep, definitely.
Was it all to do with skills, or was it because you targeted people better in terms of... Yeah.
Both. So I knew my avatar client. So when I drove down the road, I'd go, well, that person I know I'm going to relate to better than that person. So who was I going to go and see? I was going to go and see that person. So my ability to be able to pick the market was obviously stronger and better as well. I wasn't going to waste my time with these people I knew weren't going to do anything. So I got better at picking them. There's only so many hours a day you can go to work and talk to people, so try to have conversations with the right people, right? That makes a huge difference. So by picking the marketplace too made a difference. And then obviously you're right, then I could get a better strike rate on the presentation. It was just so much easier than, talking to people who didn't want to talk to me. Just makes sense. But I'm going to leave everyone with this before we wrap up, that the business thirds is a really easy way to break everything down into whether it's to do with staff, whether it's to do with product, whether it's to do with sales, into a nice, easy format that helps you accept that not everything's going to work and some things are going to work. And not to dwell on the negatives, just ignore that. But also don't take the positives as the answer either, because sometimes they're a false positive. Sometimes all this success up here isn't actually where the business is. So just remember, it's about your ability to tap into the middle of the business that really makes the difference. The difference between having a business and having a big business is this bit in the middle. The difference between getting a few sales and growing a company is all about this bit in the middle. Your ability to be able to tap into that marketplace of whatever products and services you have. And that's where it is. The exact answer for that, well, you need to work that one out yourself. What is my product? What are my services? How am I going to handle this? Am I going to be just a boutique business, or am I going to grow the business and multiply myself with other staff? So it's as far as business goes, it's like that. And when it comes to your sales rate, know that a third of the people you're talking to are going to want to talk to you, and a third of them won't. And that's just the way it is. And just accept that. I had a conversation online with a lady today that saw Anthony English, and she goes, "Oh, I'm a big fan of Anthony." She was right up here, Anthony. She was from overseas, and she just goes, I'm a massive big fan of Anthony. So she's right at the top of your tier, right? Right up there. I just can't remember her name. Not important. She was from overseas. So I'll share it with you later.
I'll pay you to remember it.
I'll share it with you later if you want to know. But I told her, so what I did was I straight away deflected. I said, go talk to Anthony because Anthony's really good. So, you know, I'm going, well, if she loves Anthony, go talk to Anthony. You know, go talk to Anthony about what she wants to learn. So that's what I did. I deflected her back to you. And so you probably had a message from someone today from overseas. If not, you will. And she'll go, I was talking to Scott. Yeah. So, but there are people out there just are that. They're right up here. But sometimes that's a false positive. You spend all your time with these people and you're wasting your time and you talk and you're having all these good conversations. But this is where the business is. Go to where the business is. Go to where the other people aren't. So I left you with one quote, which was the first impression. So you've got a good chance now of creating a first impression. The second I'll leave you with, if you like, is another one that I like, is the definition of insanity. So if you look at your marketplace and what everyone else is doing, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yeah, you've all heard that. But here's another definition of insanity. So let's say you're a marketing company and everyone's doing Facebook advertising and you're up here trying to do the same thing as everyone else. So the other definition of insanity, if you ask me, in your businesses, is if you're trying to do the same thing as everyone else and you're expecting a different result, that's insanity. Do something that's for this middle third. You can still look at that, but do something that's going to attract from a different market set, a different perspective, those people in the middle. Because if you're doing the same thing as everyone else, and you're expecting a better result, it's not going to happen. You're just going to get the same as everyone else. So on that note, that's the summary of the business of thirds.
Good. Thanks heaps, guys. I'll catch up with you.
If anyone else wants to hang around for 5 minutes, I'll hang around for 5. But otherwise, thanks for coming, everyone.
That was really good. Yeah, on the business of thirds, plenty of stuff that I hadn't heard before about it.